Book 17, Stranger at the Gates. When young Dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, Telemachus strapped his rawhide sandals to his feet, and the young prince, the son of King Odysseus, picked up the rugged spear that fit his grip, and striking out for the city, told his swineherd, "I'm off to town, old friend, to present myself to my mother." I want you to make sure you remember that the swineherd is Eumaeus, because he takes care of pigs, which are also called swine. She'll never stop her bitter tears and mourning, well I know, till she sees me face to face. And for you I have some orders. Take this luckless stranger to town, so he can beg his supper there. And whoever wants can give the man some crumbs and a cup to drink. How can I put up with every passer-by? My mind's weighed down with troubles. If the stranger resents it, all the worse for him. I like to tell the truth and tell it straight. My friend, subtle Odysseus broke in, I have no desire myself to linger here. Better that beggars cadge their meals in town than in the fields. Some willing soul will see to my needs. I'm hardly fit at my age to go to a farm and jump to a foreman's every order. Go on then, this man will take me as you've told him. Once I'm warm from the fire and the sun's good and strong. Look at the clothing on my back, all rags and tatters. So Telemachus tells Odysseus, and remember he knows that's his father, but nobody else does. So he tells Odysseus to go with Eumaeus back to town, because Telemachus says, I gotta go on and see my mother, but you come later. I'm afraid the frost at dawn could do me in, and town, you say, is a long, hard way from here. And so this is Odysseus saying this. I'm old, and it's hard for me because he's disguised as an old beggar. At that, Telemachus strode down through the farm in quick, firm strides, brooding death for the suitors. That means he's thinking about their death, because he knows that he and Odysseus have a plan. And once he reached his well-constructed palace, propping his spear against a sturdy pillar, and crossing the stone threshold, in he went. I want you to write down alliteration there. You have palace, propping, pillar. So that line right there is alliteration. You have that P sound repeated. His old nurse was the first to see him, Euryclea, just spreading fleeces over the carved inlaid chairs. Tears sprang to her eyes. She rushed straight to the prince, as the other maids of great Odysseus flocked around him, hugged him warmly, kissed his head and shoulders. Now down from her chamber came discreet Penelope, looking for all the world like Artemis or golden Aphrodite, bursting into tears as she flung her arms around her darling son and kissed his face and kissed his shining eyes and sobbed, "You're home, Telemachus!" Words flew from her heart. "Sweet light of my eyes, I never thought I'd see you again, once you shipped to Pylos, against my will, so secret, out for news of your dear father. Quick, tell me, did you catch sight of the man? Meet him? What?" "Please, mother," steady Telemachus replied. "Don't move me to tears. Don't stir the heart inside me. I've just escaped from death, sudden death." I want you to look for, before you switch slides, you have one simile and you have an epithet. Find both of those and add them to figurative language. No, bathe now, put on some fresh clothes, go up to your own room with your serving woman, pray and promise the gods a generous sacrifice to bring success, if Zeus will ever grant us the hour of our revenge. I myself am off to the meeting grounds to summon up a guest who came with me from abroad when I sailed home. I sent him on ahead with my trusted crew. I told Piraeus to take him to his house, treat him well, host him with all goodwill, till I could come myself. Words to the mark that left his mother silent. She bathed now, put on some fresh clothes, prayed and promised the gods a generous sacrifice to bring success, if Zeus would ever grant the hour of their revenge. So the hour of their revenge is the time they're able to get rid of the suitors and get back at them for all the bad stuff they've done. Spear in hand, Telemachus strode on through the hall and out, and a pair of sleek hounds went trotting at his heels. And Athena lavished a marvelous splendor on the prince, so the people all gazed in wonder as he came forward. The swaggering suitors clustered, milling round him, welcome words on their lips and murder in their hearts. But he gave them a wide berth as they came crowding in, and there where Mentor sat, Antiphus, Halitherses too. "Wait, Piraeus," wary Telemachus cautioned. "We've no idea how all of this will go. If the brazen suitors cut me down in the palace, off guard, and carve apart my father's whole estate, I'd rather you yourself or one of his friends here keep those gifts and get some pleasure from them. But if I can bring down slaughter on that crew, you get the gifts to my house. We'll share the joy." So Telemachus is saying to wait and not bring all the treasure they have back to the house now, because he doesn't want the suitors to try to kill him for it. So he says, let's just keep it, put away, and then we'll bring it back later. So here's where we skip a section. Telemachus just explains what happened while he was gone. He tells his mother, Penelope, that Odysseus is coming home as on native soil, and that means that he's in Ithaca and he's close to home. He just repeats everything we already know about where he's been. Next, Odysseus and Eumaeus make their way to Odysseus' house, where Penelope and Telemachus are. Odysseus is mocked on his way home because, remember, he looks like a poor beggar. So people are throwing things, they're kicking him, and they're treating him like trash. We pick up with Odysseus and Eumaeus walking on the road to Odysseus' home. "Listen to him," the goatherd shouted back. "All bark and no bite from the vicious mutt. One fine day I'll ship him out in a black lugger, miles from Ithaca. Send him off for a good stiff price. Just let Apollo shoot Telemachus down with his silver bow today in the halls, or the suitors snuff his life out. As sure as I know the day of the king's return is blotted out. The king is worlds away." Remember, the king is Odysseus. You also have a metaphor here. The vicious mutt, that's what they're calling Odysseus. They're comparing him to a vicious mutt, which is like a mixed breed dog, and it was looked down on. It wasn't a purebred. So they're calling him this name, and they're comparing him to that. They think he's a beggar. They don't think he's the prince, or that he's the king, Odysseus. With his parting shot, he left them trudging on and went and reached the royal house in no time. Slipping in, he took his seat among the suitors, facing Eurymachus, who favored him the most. The carver set before him his plate of meat. A staid housekeeper brought the man his bread. And now at last the king and loyal swineherd, drawing near the palace, halted just outside, as the lyre's rippling music drifted around them. Phemius striking up a song for assembled guests, and the master seized his servant's hand, exclaiming, "Friend, what a noble house! Odysseus' house it must be. No mistaking, you could tell it among a townful. Look! One building linked to the next, and the courtyard wall is finished off with a fine coping. The double doors are battle-proof. No man can break them down. I can tell a crowd is feasting there in force. Smell the savor of roasts, the ringing lyre. Listen, the lyre that God has made the friend of feasts." So Odysseus is faking it, like he doesn't know. He's like, "Oh my goodness, this must be King Odysseus' house. It's beautiful." He's faking. "An easy guess," you said, Eumaeus, swineherd. "For a man as keen as you at every turn. Put heads together. What do we do next? Either you're the first one in the palace mixed with the suitors. Leave me where I am. Or if you like, stay put and I'll go first myself. Don't linger long. Someone might spot you here outside, knock you down or pelt you. Mark my words. Take care." The man who'd borne long years abroad replied, "Well, I know, remember? There's sense in this old head. You go in, you first, while I stay here behind. Stones and blows and I are hardly strangers. My heart is steeled by now. I've had my share of pain on the waves and wars. Add this to the total. Bring the trial on. But there's no way to hide the belly's hungers. What a curse, what mischief it brews in all our lives. Just for hunger we rig and ride our long-benched ships on the barren salt sea, speeding death to enemies." So Odysseus tells Eumaeus, go on ahead. And he's saying, remember, I've had trouble too. I've had hard times. I'm a smart guy. So I'll be okay. Don't worry about me, because I know they're going to be mean. And Eumaeus knows this. He knows the suitors will treat Odysseus badly because he looks like a poor beggar. Now as they talked on, a dog that lay there lifted up his muzzle, pricked his ears. It was Argos, long-enduring Odysseus' dog. He trained as a puppy once. But little joy he got, since all too soon he shipped to sacred Troy. In the old days, young hunters loved to set him coursing after the wild goats and deer and hares. But now with his master gone, he lay there, cast away, on piles of dung from mules and cattle, heaps collecting out before the gates till Odysseus' serving men could cart it off to manure the king's estates. Infested with ticks, half dead from neglect, here lay old Argos. But the moment he sensed Odysseus standing by, he thumped his tail, nuzzling low and his ears dropped, though he had no strength to drag himself an inch toward his master. Odysseus glanced to the side and flicked away a tear, hiding it from Eumaeus, diverting his friend in a hasty, offhand way. Strange, Eumaeus, look, a dog like this, lying here on a dunghill. What handsome lines, but I can't say for sure if he had the running speed to match his looks, or he was only the sort that gentry spoil at table, show dogs, masters pamper for their points. You told the stranger, Eumaeus, loyal swineherd. Here, it's all too true. Here's the dog of a man who died in foreign parts. But if he had now the form and flair he had in his glory days, as Odysseus left him, sailing off to Troy, you'd be amazed to see such speed, such strength. No quarry he chased in the deepest, darkest woods could ever slip this hound. A champion tracker, too. Ah, but he's run out of luck now, poor fellow. His master's dead and gone, so far from home, and the heartless women tend him not at all. So this old dog was Odysseus's 20 years ago, and the dog is very old now, and he just lays there on poop. That's what dung is. So he's laying there on poop, basically. And so he sees Odysseus, and he starts wagging his tail. And that's what makes Odysseus tear up, because his old dog remembers him after all this time. And Eumaeus is saying, yeah, this dog in his day was a great dog, and strong and wonderful and fast, and a good hunting dog, but now he's old. Slaves with their lords no longer there to crack the whip, lose all zest to perform their duties well. Zeus, the old thunderer, robs a man of half his virtue the day the yoke clamps down around his neck. With that he entered the well-constructed palace, strode through the halls and joined the proud suitors. But the dark shadow of death closed down on Argos's eyes the instant he saw Odysseus, 20 years away. Now Prince Telemachus, first by far to note the swineherd coming down the hall, nodded briskly, called and waved him on. Eumaeus, glancing about, picked up a handy stool where the carver always sat, slicing the meat for suitors feasting through the house. He took it, put it beside the prince's table facing him, and straddled it himself as a steward set a plate of meat before the man and served him bread from trays. He took it and put it beside the prince's table, facing him, straddled it himself as a steward set a plate of meat before the man and served him bread from trays. Right behind him came Odysseus into his own house, looking for all the world like an old and broken beggar, hunched on a stick, his body wrapped in shameful rags. Just in the doorway, just at the ashwood threshold, there he settled down, leaning against the cypress post, a master joiner, planed smooth and hung with a plumb line years ago. Telemachus motioned the swineherd over now, and choosing a whole loaf from a fine wicker tray, and as much meat as outstretched hands could hold. There's a simile in this passage I want you to find. So Telemachus sees Odysseus coming in and waves them on in, him and Eumaeus, to come on in the room. He said, "Now take these to the stranger. Tell him to make the rounds of the suitors, beg from one and all. Bashfulness for a man in need is no great friend." And Eumaeus did his bidding, went straight up to the guest and winged a greeting. "Here, stranger, Prince Telemachus sends you these, and tells you to make the rounds of the suitors, beg from one and all, and bashfulness for a beggar, he says, is no great friend." So that's what a beggar would do, and Telemachus is trying to help Odysseus act like a beggar. This is all part of the plan. "Powerful Zeus," the crafty king responded, "grant that your prince be blessed among mankind, and all his heart's desires come to pass." Taking the food in both hands, sitting it down, spread out on his filthy sack before his feet, the beggar fell to his meal, as the singer raised a song through the house. Once he'd supped, and the stirring bard had closed, so once Odysseus had eaten, and the singer had stopped singing, the suitors broke into uproar down along the hall. And now Athena came to the side of Laertes' royal son, who was Odysseus, and urged him, "Go now, gather crusts from all the suitors, test them, so we can tell the innocent from the guilty." So a suitor who was a kind man would let Odysseus have their crumbs, and that's what the test is. If they have any food left over, they'd be like, "Well, sure, you are starving, you have nothing, you can have this." But a rude, selfish person will say, "No, you can't have it." And so that's how they're going to tell if they're innocent or if they're guilty. But not even so would Athena save one man from death. Still, off he went, begging from each in turn, circling left to right, reaching out his hand like a beggar from the day that he was born. There's a simile here. I want you to add it to your notes in figurative language. They pitied him, gave him scraps, were puzzled too, asking each other, "Who is this? Where's he from?" Till the goatherd Melanthius shouted out in their midst, "Listen to me, you lords who court our noble queen. I'll tell you about this stranger. I've seen him before. I know for a fact this swineherd let him in, though I have no idea who the fellow is, or where he thinks he comes from." "Your Highness, swineherd, why drag this to town? Haven't we got our share of vagabonds to deal with, disgusting beggars who lick the feasters' plates? Isn't it quite enough, these swarming crowds consuming your master's bounty? Must you invite this rascal in the bargain? Antinous, high-born as you are, you told the man, Eumaeus, that was a mean low speech. Now go out, who on his own hook, not I, and ask a stranger in from nowhere unless he had some skills to serve the house." So they're all making fun of Eumaeus because they're saying you shouldn't have let this beggar in. What were you thinking? Make sure you're adding all these events to your notes. These are important events. Very important events. So make sure these are all included in your notes. So Odysseus answers insult with insult. Antinous gives him a blow with a stool. So he hits him really hard with a stool that disgusts even the other suitors. So Antinous hits him so hard that all the other suitors are like, "Wow, rude. That you should never do that to someone." Report of this cruelty reaches Penelope, who asks to have the beggar brought to her so that she can question him about Odysseus. Odysseus, however, doesn't want the suitors to see him heading toward the queen's room. Eumaeus announces that he must return to his hut and hogs, leaving Odysseus alone with Telemachus and the suitors.